Hey everybody, it's Stu Smith and Jeff Nichols with the Tactical Fitness Report. And today we're going to talk about periodization again. And this cycle, we're talking about where to fit in your endurance. Because if you're preparing for something in the military, especially on the spec ops level, you'll likely have to do running, rucking, and swimming, or one or two of the three. So it can be difficult, especially if you are trying to get strong and cut your mile times down at the same time. I find that almost impossible. So that's why we tend to cycle things a little bit. So Jeff, let's start off and let's see. So I guess the question would be, how do you fit in endurance into our periodization cycles?
Yeah, I think the first thing you have to take in consideration what timeline you're working with. Yeah. Right. If someone says, "Hey, Stu, I got 6 weeks. I'm trying to get in the Navy. I've already talked to my recruiter. I got 6 weeks to pass my PST, but my numbers are crap." That's going to be an act of God, right? Yeah, kind of thing. Unless you're just, there are outliers that probably have done it, right? It's many of us. If guys we know on the team just showed up, like, "Yeah, I'll do that," and they did it. But typically, let's say we have a year. Let's just again use that same template. Let's say we have a year out. We have a guy that's going to graduate college, or he's going to spend a year in the workforce post high school. He's going to give him some time. Or let's say, for instance, I had a guy that emailed me yesterday. He's like, "Hey, I live like out in the country, homeschooled, like West Texas, no pools anywhere." And he goes, what do you think about me joining the Navy? Because I know I can't go right in from high school buds because I can't swim. But he goes, what if I spend 2 years in the fleet? This is his proposal. He came up with it. He hadn't even talked to a recruiter. And he's like, give me 2 years in the fleet, learn to swim, and mature, and use those words. And then come in, I was like, that's a brilliant idea. If you have the maturity to handle 2 years in the fleet and use that 2 years wisely, oh, man.
Absolutely. And that 2 years, I promise you, will be a motivator for you when you are at buds to never even consider quitting.
Yep. It's probably, that's Stu and I were talking just a minute off camera. That's probably the number one motivator for anyone that's gone to buds that's been prior fleet. But so getting back a little bit on the endurance side, let's say we've got that year. Now, even I get questions all the time like, well, I see your program. You're not a proponent of running, these sort of things. No. What you're mistaking is that, as Stu has already said, we got to plug them in at periods of time in that periodization model. So the long bouts of endurance don't impede with strength development, hypertrophy if we need it, right? Overall strength development if we need it, power, speed, and agility, right? Those, they don't work well together, especially power, speed, and agility and endurance. Right. Trained at the same time as a conjugate don't work so well because energy systems are so different. Now, the beautiful thing about long bouts of cardiovascular activity during the strength phase is, again, it's going to sound like I'm going to contradict myself, is that if you can put them in there in appropriate doses, it improves your rate of recovery, right? Improves your hemoglobin content, which improves oxygen transport to the blood, out to the lungs, and so forth. But if my point is if we overreach too often, if we run too much too often in a certain phase, then we certainly will regress. And that's what Stu is saying. Hey, if you're trying to get a faster 1.5 mile time for the PST, but all you're doing is long bouts of cardiovascular running, swimming, it won't get any faster.
Right.
See, it may a couple seconds, but not at the rate that we perceive based off the work you're putting in. Yeah. So one of the exceptions that Stu and I talked about, and let Stu talk about, is like, let's say someone comes in and says, hey, I'm way overweight, but I'm driven, and where should I start in strength training? And so let's Stu kind of take off what he thinks of, like, what he would prescribe somebody that's going to come in the military or something that's way overweight that wants to get to buds, for example.
Yeah, like I said, if you have, let's say you're 20, 30 pounds overweight and you give yourself a year to get in shape. First of all, don't give yourself any time. Go when you are ready. There's no like deadline to when you have to join the military. I get really tired of seeing people like, I'm giving myself 6 months to go talk to a recruiter. Why? Go to a recruiter when you're ready to go talk to the recruiter. Don't do it at some arbitrary date just because you graduated high school. Give yourself some time and get ready. So with this guy, I would say, we build a good foundation of strength, start getting some calisthenics in there, maybe do a calisthenic base with him a little bit and start implementing some of the weight training, just kind of help balance out some of the things that the calisthenics miss, with the weights. And, from there, I always like to do that part first in a workout. And then at the end of the workout, go into some, if he's overweight, probably not good to like start him off on a pure running program. So maybe do some non-impact cardio, get some Tabata intervals in there. Really, the goal is burning some more calories. And, if he's wanting to go to buds, then by all means, we can use that cardio time in the pool and teaching them swimming technique, where we actually, learn how to swim properly with the proper techniques, which is still a good cardio base foundation, and you're going to be burning calories. And then start turning those swim training sessions into workouts where you're actually going faster, pushing yourself harder, burning more calories, getting in better swimming shape. And then you'll start seeing the progress of weight loss, and then you can start adding running on that prior to swimming. So I tend to mix in, a cycle of, like, in the spring and summer, kind of focus more on running progression. So every week gets a little bit harder on the running, whether it's speed or distance, mixed with a lot of calisthenics and some dumbbell work in there just to kind of balance out the stuff. And then in the fall and winter, we've built up a lot of running in the spring and summer. But in the fall and winter, I tend to taper that down a little bit and then focus more on the non-impact side of the cardio, being swimming more with fins and lifting more with legs, throwing in some rucks even though it's not a run, it's more of a ruck, but you're just getting your body used to carrying weight, whether you're going to be rucking in the Army or you're going to be carrying boats and logs on your shoulders and head. Those are type of things that can help you prepare for that type of load-bearing exercises. So we'll kind of cycle through the year. And once again, if you're familiar with my periodization I've been doing for 20 years, I'll each spring, summer, fall, and winter, we kind of focus on a different element of fitness, but we're not neglecting any of the elements of fitness. It's just not a pure focus. Like right now, we're downgrading our running and we're building up our swimming, but we're also adding in more weight training. And the running that we are doing is fewer miles, but higher intensity and running faster. So this is where right now everybody's 1.5 mile times just start skyrocketing, because we're doing sprints, we're doing goal pace repeats at half mile intervals, quarter mile intervals, learning what that goal pace should be, so you can maintain it for the PT test. So
and I think that one thing we're going to talk, I think I guess we missed, not really missed, but let's define what we say cardio, we say cardiovascular, we say aerobic stuff. And instantly I think most people think running.
Right.
Like that's cardio. Running is cardio. And I call it a Pepsi challenge. I did a challenge with some of my athletes. I said, I bet you, and this is someone that especially with someone, he had stress fractures, came in, I go, we can get cardiovascular conditioning out of you without any running. I could do it with your biceps, and we did. Yeah. I did what's called bicep cardio, and it's just monitoring the heart rate. I mean, now, again, we think cardiovascular training where it's like there's got to be that impact conditioning as well. Again, that's where we're getting off the rail. I'm trying not to get off the rails because my head goes a million different directions when I hear cardio. Cardio is anything. Cardiovascular training is anything we can raise, lower the heart rate with consistency and over duration and time. Now, and that is where we say, hey, well, in strength training, the squat, for example, is a way to improve the body's ability to manage ground force. We can do cardio other ways, especially the way Stu phases stuff out to, we up the intensity here, but we lower the trauma here. Yes. It's a shift. There's this, it's like scales. When something goes up, something's got to give. Yes. But we're saying give, we're not saying sacrifice.
Right.
We're not sacrificing something because it's these shifts that keep just shifting. It's not these big swings, right? We're not taking, and again, I have two guys that are former bodybuilders, 300 pounds. One was a pro bodybuilder trying to get into buds.
Wow.
He's at 250 full right now. It just so have his wife is a registered dietitian though.
Oh yeah, that's
awesome. 262 is what we weighed. But he's a freak. Like he can run. He can do those sort of things because we're making this shift. Not to mention he's very intelligent and motivated too. But the thing is that's what we want you guys to understand is you may look at my program, for example, and people go, I don't see the running. Well, if you look at the program as a whole, you'll see that there is cardiovascular training in there. It just may not be the pounding I want because, again, mine is very similar to Stu's. Like if you see my trainer wrote program, that's not my year program.
Right.
That's a phase of what I do, right? I'm finishing my hypertrophy program probably tonight. It's a 12-week phase of hypertrophy, right? And then I go into strength, some more absolute heavier weights for a short period of time. And then I go into basically that longer high intensity spectrum sort of, but there's always cardiovascular stuff planted in there because that's really great for recovery. It's good to sometimes, like for me, like it's that moment where you just got to clear your mind and get out on the road or get in the pool.
Yep.
We want that.
Yeah.
So just understand that. And just there's no takeaway, here's the takeaway. A program should encompass at minimum a year or more. And that's because it's not, if I have an 8-week program or Stu's got a 12, whatever it is, it's understand that's a piece of the puzzle. Yes. That's not the whole puzzle. So that's what I guys want you to step back. If you're like, I had a guy that emailed me last night. He's been doing the same thing for 2 years and he hasn't gotten any better at all over the last 5 months. It's just a simple change in his program is going to elicit this adaptation because he's maxed out what he's doing.
Right.
He's physiologically maxed out his capability for that phase. Got to shift.
Yep.
Got to shift. Okay. And so that's what we're talking about cardio. So I'll let you kind of jump in, Stu. So let's go with this, Stu. Let's go. Well, just that simple template that we've gone over, like the phase 1, 2, 3. Yep. Like we have hypertrophy and strength, right? Then we have the power phase. Let's go back. Then the strength phase. Where are you generically? Again, folks, this is a generic. Where are you going to plug in? What is your approach in plugging in long bouts of endurance in a strength phase to not envelop and overtrain? How are you going to? What's your outlook on that?
I do a couple different ways. I like to do. I put it this way: when I'm in the weight room now, especially with lifting, even if we're in a heavy lift cycle, say we're doing 5 sets of 5 deadlifts, hang clean, push press, right? And that's part of or doing squats maybe, whatever that is. And we're moderately heavy on that. I like to throw in, after doing a few of those exercises, I don't like to rest so much. I like to rest with doing different muscle groups.
Yeah. And
what I will also do is, after doing we do maybe a complex between deadlift, hang clean, push press, 5, 5, 5, right? And your rest can either be something in, it can be a variety of things. It could be running up and down stairs. It could be getting on the bicycle, just riding for 5 minutes, come back around. It doesn't have to be hard. It just has to be something just to keep you moving. And, I was a power lifter, when I was in high school and beginning of college. And I remember just sitting in the weight room for like 5 minutes doing nothing, to recover for my next lift, and that was how I kind of cut my teeth in fitness. And I don't think that has a place in tactical fitness programming. Unless you just you're going on a powerlifting meet and you just want to be able to compete, that's a way to do it, and
that structured powerlifting model is a great lesson for movement, but the structure of that programming, I agree, is probably not the best.
Right. Yeah.
Probably not optimal.
Yeah. It's not optimal for, especially, adding any endurance to that.
The tactical, like for the selection tactical space, because the guys, when you get into the teams, you're going to favor what you want to do. And there are guys that do actually, I know guys that do compete in powerlifting in the teams.
I've seen everybody compete from Ironman, triathletes, bodybuilding,
my troop commander is an academy graduate. Funny enough, I'm not going to name his name because he's still active, but his great grandfather is Stonewall Jackson. Naval Academy, not West Point. So that was funny. He's like, well, how did you not?
Wow.
Because the Army really wanted him to come. Anyway, so, but he was at one time, he was the national champion triathlete.
Damn.
And he's I think he might be the XO or DCO now.
That's cool.
Super good dude. Right.
Yeah.
But he was training for competitive Ironmans.
Yeah, like not to just finish an Ironman, but to win one.
Win them.
Yeah, that's a completely different
Such
mindset.
a good dude, though. Yeah. Anyway, so so let's also not mistake. We are talking still specifically about selection prep, not the teams.
Right. Okay. But also, after that, so that's kind of like during our strength cycle. So we'll typically start at 6 a.m. to 7. We're doing some form of strength cycle, but we'll pepper in some type of movement that gets your heart rate up higher than your typical strength stuff. It might be up and down steps on a leg day. It might be a bike or elliptical or a rowing machine on an upper body day. Just depends. It might be a run on the treadmill for 5 minutes. So it's not a crazy amount of mileage that we're trying to throw in there that will hurt your strength gains, right? It's just something to just kind of keep the heart rate up. Yep. And then afterwards, when we're pretty much done and our legs are shaking and we're like, whew, okay, that's a good workout, and you feel like you got nothing left, we go jump in the pool and we'll tread water for about 5-10 minutes, and our temperature come back down, and now we're like, okay, I got the second wind now, so now we'll hit the cardio in the pool. And that is such a great transition. And then after it's doing that, whether you're swimming with fins or you're swimming without fins, treading water with no hands, you leave there and you're in no pain whatsoever. Yeah. It is such a good recovery tool, for doing, that type of strength training, and you're able to build strength. Now, is it world-class strength? No, but you don't need to be a world-class anything to do these jobs. You just need to be good at everything. And that's why I like to kind of balance it in that way. So, yeah,
it sounds like on that, it's like I was, like I said, I was when I was a senior in high school, I was a national qualifier. So I swam in the Midwest Regional Swim Meet. I qualified for the National Olympic tryouts in Fort Lauderdale, Florida that year. But here's the deal. I had to become a worse swimmer to improve some of my other things like running.
Yes.
So I knew that. That was my big thing. I was like, man, I could swim for days and I could lift weights. But I was like, this isn't helping me with where I really need work, and that was the running. And
yeah, so what I did exact same way.
There was at Troy University when I went to school. They didn't have a particularly good track team at the time. Now it's quite good. Actually, they beat LSU last night.
I saw.
Football team did, right? So
couldn't believe it.
I know, right? But they're at the time they had one of the guys on the cross country team was from the UK, and he was like nationally ranked, which was an anomaly for Troy at the time. And I remember sitting down with him and talking to him. And that guy, he could just run. And I remember just talking to him going, I need to improve my running. Like I was strong all day and I could run stadiums and those sort of things. But like you said, 1 mile was long, but 4 miles to me seemed daunting.
Yeah.
At a good pace. And so I just started talking with him, and he's like, hey man, don't even get your wrapped around the axle with that right now. Like just be steady. Because people get so hyper-focused on a clock.
Yeah.
You're like, I need to run a mile and a half in 9 minutes. But they're like, well, I can't, I'm running it. Or it's like, well, I want to run my 4 mile in 29 to 31 minutes, but they're like in an hour. That is why Stu and I are saying, if you give yourself enough time in that cardiovascular, because you can get stronger pretty quick. That's the thing, is that you can get strong pretty quick because you have a neurological.
Even my cross country guys get strong.
They do like that because it's a neurological shift and then a physical shift. But when we're talking about cardiovascular improvement, you got to hit it a couple different ways. And if all you do is run, you're almost not challenging the system, because like Stu is saying, he's shifting intensity and distance. Like we're saying, I got to run 4 miles. Well, that must mean I'm going to get better if I run 6. Not necessarily, because if the mileage working up to 4 is slow and inefficient, you're just going to be training to be inefficient for 4 miles, really.
Yeah.
So that's why you're seeing Stu is saying, hey, I'm going to drop my distance, but I'm going to start doing 400 repeaters, 200 repeaters, even 100-meter repeaters.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden you go, well, how can that help? It's a buffering capability. It was what it is. If you can't buffer at a mile, if you're trying to run 400 repeaters and your body can't buffer that hydrogen, those repeaters at 400, you're not going to be able to buffer at the 2 mile mark when you need it, right? Because that intensity that you run those 400s is much greater than you're going to run the 200s or the 2 miles.
Yes.
But we got to get there first. We got to challenge the organism first. And so that's where we go, okay, well, getting back kind of onto like the cardio piece is like, well, we've talked about strength and it actually marries itself well. And that the example that Stu gave is like, do the strength training, get in the pool. He's letting the body, that treading water might seem like work, and some people might work for some, but it allows that energy system to shift into an oxidative system to where you're using only, because we have to think of like when a car is racing, think of a race car. When the race car driver pushes the clutch in, there is that pause that allows the transmission to catch and go to the next gear. We're the same way. It's just that shift is much longer.
Right.
So he's given his athletes an opportunity for that nervous system to get that shift and go, okay, we've caught up. Now we can accelerate. We got to that next gear. And so that is where the cardio side on the power also. So we've talked about that. Stu's talked about that strength and like, give it a minute, let it shift, get into cardio so we can get into the energy system. And we're not just depleting yourself of glycogen.
Right.
Okay? You train the glycogen, then you train the oxidative. But a lot of times people don't let the body shift. And then you go into total VO2 max out, and you can't get into the aerobic side.
Right.
Let your body shift. Give it a couple minutes. Like Stu was saying, 5 minutes, boom.
Yeah.
And that shift is going to happen somewhere between 3 and 7 for most people.
Right.
Now the next piece then, Stu, is we talk about we've talked about strength. We've shown okay, how do we sprinkle it in there? Okay, because we can sprinkle it in there quite a bit.
Oh yeah.
Now on the power side, where Stu is saying already talking about, hey, back in his younger days before joining the Navy, he was a power lifter and he would take long bouts, which you need to in powerlifting. You need to in Olympic. You need to take those long rest periods. Well, in the tactical space, you are still going to train that power, speed, and agility. Well, then how do we? I'll propose the question then. How is it that you're going to, in those dynamic, explosive bouts of power, agility, and speed that you're going to work? How then do you put in your cardiovascular training?
Yeah. You know what? Hey, here's a cool thing that I do. When you look at my running program, you might see a total of 6 miles of running in a day. But here's what it looks like. We go 2 miles to get to this hill, right? And this hill we call Ass Whip Hill. And it's a 1/4 mile hill, pretty good level. And you do round trips of that, you keep adding in these like 1/2 mile sets. So you're going up and you're going down. So we do that 2 or 3 times, maybe 4 sometimes. But instead of coming back, on that 2 mile run, nice and easy, we actually push, 100 meter, fast runs, 200 meter fast runs with a 100 meter walk. Right, all the way back for 2 miles. So, you might look at it as a 6 mile run, but it really is a series of easy cardio getting down there, kind of warm up, then push hard on that hill, up and down the hill, try to sprint up the hill, jog down the hill. And it's killer. I mean, your heart is like through the roof at the top of that thing. And it's just long enough. Like I tell people all the time, if this thing was about 20 feet longer, I'd probably quit.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
It's right at that point where I think I'm going to have a heart attack. And then when you come back, it's a series of, we'll cool down for about 3 or 4 minutes on the run. And then it's nothing but intervals all the way back, 100, 200 meter intervals. So, that is a good way. What I think is a way to kind of mix it all together. So you're still getting the ground distance, but you're getting a lot of different type of running forces and cardiovascular benefit from changing it up like that. And people are swearing up and down by this hill. When they're at Bud's running their 4 mile timed runs, they're saying, man, thank God we did that hill. It's like I said, find yourself a hill, a bleacher set, mix in some of your, couple mile runs with, some of those thrown in between. And you'll find that, that is sufficient.
Yeah. The name of the game, and Stu laid it out for you. I'll give he hit it out of the park when talking about speed, power, and agility and how to plug it in. And this is why. Most importantly, when you're talking about, resistance training or speed, agility, and power, you have to allow for a rest period, because that is where the body can replenish and charge. Replenish. That's where we got to teach. Because again, like think of an obstacle course at Buds. That is it's like the perfect dance between endurance and power.
Yeah.
It's just like some obstacles you're going to get pretty easy. You're like, okay, I got to kind of chess match this a little bit and get through this, because I really got to charge to this next one, throttle back, charge. And so that's what you're saying. Like, if we're doing a standardized powerlifting model in the weight room, we got to sprinkle cardio in it. Basic cardiovascular training is the weight room. The resistance training is going to be kind of what it is. Like, we got to move fast, rest, move fast, rest, move fast, rest, and then just take the cardio piece and marry that same sort of tempo. And as Stu said, we call it an Indian run. We call it a tempo run. It's run for 30 seconds as hard as you can, mosey for 30. Run, or distance, like he's saying, run hard for 200, walk for 200 or 100, because it throttles up, throttles back, throttles up. We teach our body to recover in shorter periods of time than with intervals.
Yeah.
And that's why it works so very well over duration, because I'll spell it out one more time. Those intervals, the velocity you cover that 200 meters, and then you walk the 100 to 200, this velocity is much higher than you'll ever run your 4 mile time at Buds on average. That velocity is greater than that 4 mile velocity. So if we were to take that velocity and go, let's run 80% of that or 75% of that over the pace you're going to run your 4 mile at Buds, you're all of a sudden like, wow, that 4 mile is pretty easy.
Yeah.
And that 75% or 80% pace at Buds at a 4 mile gets you 3 minutes under the time.
Yeah.
So because that is why the intervals really, really challenge the oxidative system. And then we throttle it back. We bring it up, we throttle it back. But when you're done with it, if you don't overreach, your nervous system goes, hey man, we need to adapt to that. We need more red blood cells. We need to increase our hemoglobin, all those sort of things, because we need to recover. If you never give yourself a chance to recover, your body just goes into shutdown.
Right. Hey, real quick, let's talk about, like I said, I just explained to when I run a 6 mile run, what we do. It is a mix of hills and intervals and some distance in there, easy pace distance and recovery. So let's compare that to what the body is doing if you were just to go run a 6 mile run. Yeah. Nice steady pace. Now there's nothing wrong with running a 6 mile run steady pace, because you breathe in through your nose, it kind of calms you down a little bit. It's a good stress reliever. It actually has some benefits. But let's just compare the two for just what we're doing.
For sure. Yeah, I think that, again, I'm looking at the biology and the physiology to help explain how we feel. Because so let's say the listeners and Stu and I, we go out anywhere in the States here and we go for a 6 mile run. Well, for those of us that have good cardiovascular conditioning, you're going to get that, depending on pace, it depends on pace, you're going to get that, 7, 10, 12 minutes later, you'll be like, if the pace isn't too high, you just feel like you can go. That's the oxidative shift.
Right.
But for many people, we don't get an oxidative shift because your pace is too high, and all of a sudden you just get slower and slower and slower because your body can't keep up with that oxygen. Can't keep up. So because when the byproduct is carbon dioxide, it saturates the cells. It won't take in oxygen. It can't get rid of it. Right. So that's why we slow down. The lungs are trying to expel it when you exhale the carbon dioxide. But if your body can't keep up, you just get slower and slower and slower over that 6 miles. Now, you get to a point where you can just run it, right? Again, we're not talking about the 106-pound Kenyans that can run a 26-mile race at under a 6-minute pace. Yeah. That's not what we're talking about, folks. Yeah. We're talking about the average Bud student or soft student that's 165 pounds, okay? Now, if you take that 6 mile run and go, well, it's the physics of it too, is we're talking time under tension. Like the pace that Stu runs back from that hill, we're really just calculating the time in which he's moving in a running pace. Then we add that piece up and go, well, wait a minute. You just really covered 4 miles. You did it in 22 minutes. That's bananas. Like how, but like, well, people go, yeah, but he was walking. That no, it certainly counts.
Yeah.
It most certainly counts, because we're talking about the time that you're exerting yourself. That's the physics of it. You're only, people are like, well, wait a minute. How can walking help me? I'm walking. It's cheating.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's not, because you're not under tension. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, you are gravity and such, but that's the beauty of physiology and physics, is we can go, well, wait a minute. Like, we're just trying to improve the organism. And the best way in this case to improve that organism is to challenge it, let it recover, and then challenge it again, recover. At some point when you challenge it, your body goes, hey, I can't keep up. Then we throttle back.
I tell you what's really neat is, I've been doing this type of training for years, and I never really put the physics equation of work to it.
Yeah.
When you look at physics, work equals force times distance.
Yep.
Right. And you can get a high amount of work 2 different ways.
Yes.
You can increase your force, decrease your distance.
Yep.
You can increase your distance, decrease your force.
Yep.
And that's really what Jeff is talking about when he proposes to run faster and rest with a walk. That amount of work that he's doing with that high amount of force for a shorter distance is going to be bigger than the amount of work required to run a longer distance at a lower speed, at a lower force.
Yep.
But basic force of your legs working.
Yep.
So
as long as your body mass doesn't change, which it's not,
Right.
I mean, you're going to lose some water, but, and also as long as gravity is 9.8 meters per second squared, as long as those two exist, right?
Yeah.
Those equations exist. And
Yeah.
that's the thing but that's also saying, like, again, the contrast is going, well, wait a minute. You're meaning to tell me if I take a PVC pipe and move with greatest possible velocity, I can get the same adaptation as 135 in a bar. No. If you drop the mass too low, you can't cover enough distance to get that work capacity high enough.
Right.
And the same token is why we're saying power lifters isn't the way to go either, because if that mass is so high and you can't cover enough distance to create a biggest work capacity, you also don't. So what Stu and I are doing, here's the deal is Stu and I's program are accumulating volume with good movement patterns, and we keep increasing it over time.
Yeah.
That is the tactical space. We need to challenge the body with economical volume and then shift it. Right? Economical speed, shift it. Economical endurance, then shift it again. Instead of just every day it's something that isn't controlled. And there is a lot of thought that should go into this sort of training, because number one, it's so a million reasons. Stu and I believe in this more than anything else, because number one, it's our community that we love, and 2, because we know that our programming is correct. That's the difference. Is like we believe it because it's right. It's really easy to believe in something so wholeheartedly if we know that we're correct.
Yeah.
And
you see it, you see it in results. You see it in, guys emailing you back saying, hey, I just made it through selection.
Yeah.
Hey, man, that's awesome. And now I will say this, I don't mean to interrupt you. We'll say this, Jeff and I get people to a certain level of fitness. And then there comes a time where you don't have Jeff or myself or your coach or whoever, and you're alone with your thoughts, and you're cold and dark and wet and sandy and lonely. And, that's when you make your decision to stay. But it is so much nicer to make that decision much later in the game, because you don't have to engage that mental toughness on day one. I remember first few days of buds, and people were quitting like flies, like left and right. And I was like, wow, we haven't even gotten hard yet.
It's like, geez.
I was like, what's going on? I was like, damn, is it that hard already? I mean, am I that prepared? But I mean, yes, I guess I was, and I think the people that go there, ultra prepared for that type of volume and that type of work, in the end, you don't worry about engaging the mental toughness to get through something.
Right.
You actually focus on trying to win something.
Yeah.
You know, and that mindset is completely different than trying to.
That's a huge shift.
Absolutely. You try to win an event instead of, you know, trying to survive it.
Yeah.
You know, and that mindset alone is huge.
Yep. That's a big one I found to be. There are very small victories that you'll ever win in buds.
Yeah.
If you can win them, they mean a lot though. Like I'm talking for me as an individual, I was like, man, if I could win this swim, this buds instructor, let me tell you, Stu has probably told you this a million times, but you're never, and I mean never, going to get patted on the back at buds by an instructor. Go, you did awesome, Nichols.
Yeah. Yeah.
They're going to be like, yeah, you shut up, get beat. They're just going to say, you're going to hear the words beat it more than anything else. Be like, you check in with your swim. You're like, you're 40 minutes out of the water before anyone else. Like, beat it, Nichols. Or drop down. Why'd you swim it so fast? And they're like,
why did you swim last week so fast?
Yeah. Like, beat it, Nichols. You know, so, and you'll get that. But in the back of your head, you're like, I'd rather have that.
Yes.
You know, so, and then, so which brings me to my last, brings us to our last sort of point about cardiovascular, which is why in the selection space, this might be the only time you'll get to do a taper, right? So Stu and I both, you keep seeing like, get them stronger, get them faster, get more endurance. Well, like, let's say I'm 6 weeks out, either to take the PST or you've auto-qualled one of the guys auto-called me and said, hey, I auto-qualled yesterday. I'm like, yes, you did. Because you did 137 push-ups. Right, 36 pull-ups. I'm just like, yep, that's why I'm training, right? So to get that, got his auto qual, and he goes, all right, well, I'm going in February 5th or whatever, and he's like, what should I look like? I go, hey, let's start your taper. Basically, 6 weeks out, I'm going to work some volume at that 3 weeks, and then there's just going to be a total handoff. I'm going to start tapering volume at 6 weeks to an endurance. So those last 3 weeks are endurance and speed. And so that's the last piece for me is like, we want to get you guys literally as strong as possible. And then focus on the endurance piece before you go in. Like really becomes the focal point of what you do because, you know, yes, we want you to run a lot of miles, really fast, but it's a timing thing. We really want to get it right. We don't want to sacrifice strength. Because if we can do it, we strength and power and then endurance and strength and power and endurance, and we get you strong and powerful. And then if we got to do it in phases, way better than just only do strength training and then focus on this, or only do endurance and then hope to get stronger. So what I like to do is get my guys as strong and as powerful as possible within the relevance of what they're doing. But then before they go in, I want to get them as cardiovascular capable as possible for one last reason. And that is because the more oxygen and hemoglobin that you can transport within a bigger body of mass, I'm not talking powerlifting bodybuilder size, you're better off at fighting disease. You're better off at fighting the cold. You're better off at the homeostasis of going into that new environment when you've got really good cardiovascular conditioning. You handle stress better. So I'm looking at more at the nervous system as well as the performance side. So that's my taper for my athletes becomes cardiovascular focused. And that's what, again, you see guys that are sick or injured or like, what do? We can drive that heart up. That enhances recovery as long as you don't overreach. So that's my last piece. I'm going to focus on cardio in the taper as well.
Yeah, I would agree. Absolutely. In fact, I tend to have people when they're heading off to boot camp, basically consider boot camp is your taper.
Yeah.
Right. So you get to boot camp and you're just crushing everything. Right. You've gotten to the training. You're preparing to get through the training. You know, you specifically engaged your body in 4-mile timed runs and 2-mile swims. You know, you are ready for that training. Now, boot camp is going to be nowhere near that level of effort.
Yeah.
You know, so you got to just use boot camp as a taper. And your number one goal at boot camp is try not to get sick.
Yep. Agreed.
Right? If you can avoid bronchitis and pneumonia and all those things, you're just going to be you're going to be so much ahead. Now, there's obviously there are germs and you if you can just stay clean, that's great. Don't even touch your face,
Yeah.
unless you're
crazy.
washing.
If you're a nail biter, it buds.
Oh man,
or, I'm sorry, if you're a nail biter,
yeah, you're done. Yeah, you got to be
you're
chewing on germs from all over the country.
Oh man,
yeah, it's disgusting.
The big petri dish. So just to break yourself of that habit for sure. But so that's again, I think that Stu and I, hopefully you guys see now that we have a real process behind what we do. It certainly isn't randomized. It's not a shotgun approach. Now, there certainly is a time that we do want to just throw a curveball at you guys. We do, and we do plan on doing that.
Yeah.
But it's with purpose. It's not a way for Stu and I to go, yeah, I'm the big bad buds instructor, which you're going to get. We want that in that environment. We want you to go, you could give guys heads up. Hey, sometime next week, be ready. Make sure you come every day with fins, running shoes, a snack, some extra water. Just be prepared because one day this week, we're going to, and then Stu is himself and myself. Like, I'm going to kick myself in the butt with you.
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely.
And I think that's one of the real beauties about buds in the soft community is across the board, the cadre and the soft selection courses train with the candidates.
Yeah.
It's very important.
Yeah. It sets a great example, and your goal is just to stay with that instructor.
Yes.
That's it. You just stay there right behind them. You're good to go.
Yeah, for sure.
You're meeting the standard.
I think hopefully this answered some of those questions, because that's one of the more reoccurring questions that I get is, I understand the image that I have. I'm the tattoo is a bigger guy. I talk a lot about strength training. I wouldn't have to talk so much about strength training if people understood, and it's not your fault. It's the teachers in our field, right? They don't share ethically or adequately the information on how do we get stronger without this perception of bodybuilder, powerlifter. And it's no at all knock on that sport, those sports. I love them.
Absolutely.
But it's not what we're trying to do. But there's never weakness in getting stronger, right? There's never a weakness in getting more cardiovascular capability unless one begins consuming the other. Okay.
Yep.
And it's balance. It comes to balance.
Yeah, I would agree with that 100%. Because like I said, the problem with a lot of these strength cycles that some people go through, they just completely neglect, any cardiovascular on the back end of that. Yeah. And then they wonder why they can't run so fast. It's just,
for sure.
It just happens. So,
yeah. And I think that the last piece is that, if you're unsure about what you're doing in your programming, just take a step back and go, have I trained some strength for a period of time? Have I trained some power and agility and speed for a period of time? And am I doing cardio as a base too much and I'm not getting stronger? Just step back and evaluate what you're doing, because you'll probably find that just small little tweaks will yield a big improvement. Yeah. So we don't have to clean sweep. Like most people's programs, we don't have to go, stop what you're doing, you're way off. Right. It's usually, all right, let's take a look at what you're doing. And if we just switch this around or add this or take this away a little bit, all of a sudden they're like, wow, I just had a 25 push-up jump in 3 weeks. How'd that happen?
Right.
We got to let the body heal sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sometimes you're not pushing hard enough too. But the community that trains with Stu and I is typically the guys, we almost kind of rein them back a little bit.
Oh, absolutely. If anything that I do as a coach it's pull the reins.
Yeah.
I got to pull the reins. So, whoa, let's maybe not enter that 50-mile race.
Yeah.
Right. Let's do a triathlon instead, or
do a sprint. Yeah. So, but anyways, yeah, man, I appreciate it. Again, we'll come up. I guess we probably haven't even really come up with a topic yet, but maybe that's for you viewers. Like,
let us know.
Let us know what you want to hear.
Email us. Our emails are in the description down there. So just email us. Let us know what you want to hear. We'll chat about it.
Sounds good.
All right, Jeff. Thanks again.
Always take care.